we've all know the importance of putting systems in your business, but there's a lot more to it than that. It's such a simple concept, Dennis, that I think many of us don't really even bother because we're so busy with the day to day, especially if we're just starting our businesses. We're not thinking about systems. I'm just trying to get that first dollar to come in.
No, I mean, one, you're drinking from a fire hose. You're just doing everything usually. I mean, if you're a solo owner, you're the accountant, you're the sales counter, you're the, stocking person, you're logistics, you're all
Janitor.
that stuff. Janitor, you're the CEO, you're everything. Um, but then eventually it begins to evolve, and you probably pull in people or at least contractors or something, and all of a sudden you expect them to know exactly what you're doing, and that's when things begin to break down. And so it's really, really important to document processes. And Benny, you and I see it a lot too as we come in to help companies with automation. They want to approve a process, but they don't have it really documented. And we can do it, but it adds a lot more cost because we've got to help them figure out where they're heading and where they're going. And a lot of times they don't even realize that Mary's over here doing something that nobody even knew was part of the process. And so those are things where you've got to kind of pull together and think through. And it does make a difference if you take time, and none of us like to document. I'm guilty of it as well. That, just hitting, from my standpoint, even if you just list the milestones, it's going to be a step in the right direction. And then, but there's people that can help you do this. And that's our guest today. And so it's one where it helps life become better for you.
Yeah. So today we have Hannah Rawiszer, and she is the CEO of Helping Hannah Professional Services. She really breaks this down into bite-sized chunks and really talks about the importance of systems, the idea of mental load, and really what that means for us. And, Hannah specializes in helping all businesses, but she has a specialty in working with women-owned businesses too as well. I think that's a super important topic. Let's have a listen. This is a really good topic.
WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
Dennis, all of my grown up life in the entrepreneurial world, after we've decided to go ahead and make our businesses real and actually take that first step, a lot of the times I have an idea, and the important thing was generating money, is just getting the business off the ground. And as the business matured and went through different stages, the thing that I was always told, and I'm sure you were too, is you got to start putting systems in place. You got to systematize everything within your business.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of times it's in your head. I mean, so there's, processes and things that have to happen. Some of it's logical. Some of it is just, you just do it by nature, that it's just, I do this and I do this and I do this, and nobody knows that you do this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden something changes and nobody knows it. And that's when the wheels begin to come off the bus.
Yeah.
And so, Benny, I know you and I see it a lot too,
Yeah.
because we get pulled into companies to try to help them streamline processes with automation, but they can't tell you what the process is, or they'll tell you it's A, B, and C, but they forget to tell you there's also D, E, F. Oh, and there's Z over here that happens on the third month when it starts with a J.
It's all those detail things that kind of just live. We know this stuff, and it's up here. So we got to bring in an expert today. And Hannah, thank you for coming by today. We appreciate this. You're going to help us kind of sort all this ideas out, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Benny and Dennis. I appreciate being here
Welcome.
and being able to talk about this. And just the things that you were saying, I'm thinking about it from my perspective as well, from being in business for 5 years. When you begin, it's exciting, especially if you're doing something that you're really passionate about. Your business is your baby. So nobody knows it better than you. And while everything you do is in your head, at some point we're human and we forget things. And then there are gaps. And then things fall through the cracks in those processes that we think we really know, all the time in our head, that we think we're keeping up with. And then that affects so many things around us. I mean, obviously we're building a business on our own. So we're a solopreneur. So we don't really have another team member to help us. And so we're doing everything. And I mean, there's just so much that one person can do and stay in control of, right? And making sure that everything is being touched, especially your clients and your
Yeah.
customers, and how you
Well,
focus
and you
on
think about it, this applies also to a company that has multiple employees. And
that.
so,
Absolutely.
because I hear a lot of times, oh, we hired this new person and they just don't do it right. Well, they don't do it right because you don't have it documented for them to follow, because the person that they're filling in for knew all the processes and did it. And they're coming in, you're expecting this new person to be able to know that all these things have to happen, and no, let's be honest, nobody likes to document. That's the problem. That's the
No
real
one
problem.
likes it, but I do.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, what does that look like, Hannah, in terms of like what does everything lives in my head look like in real business? What does that look like from a day to day? And maybe we don't think that we are, but maybe these are some signs to look out for.
Yeah, no, sure. This is what it looks like. So let's say you offer a service wherever on your website, or somebody gets in touch with you, right? So
Mhm.
they found that they could book a discovery call with you. So that discovery call pops up on your calendar, and you're like, oh, maybe you're at the grocery store, okay? Because you're a solopreneur business owner, so you can go out of the house and do things. So now you
Mhm.
see this, and now you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to reply, right? So maybe you have to stop and you have to send an email, and it's something that's in your head, and it's not something that you have already created a template for. Me saying this is that nothing is working for you on the backside of your business. Like, your system isn't running for you so that you
Mm.
can not enjoy the grocery trip, but actually enjoy being able to not have to stop and run your business. And so that discovery call gets, booked. Well, you want to make an impression. So a lot of times people have a follow-up email that automatically goes out to say, thank you so much for booking the call. Maybe you have a vetting questionnaire. If you've even thought about that. Have you thought about that? That's part of, before the onboarding process of taking a client on. So it can look like so many things. And now let's say you have that consult call. Well, what happens on that consult call? What happens after it? If you close the deal, now are you creating an invoice on your own, or do you have something already created on the back end, maybe in a platform
Mm.
or your CRM? Do you have tools working for you? Do you have a contract, or do you have to come up with that every time? It's all this manual stuff that, yes, we understand it's all in our head. Those are the manual processes, but what is it really creating in your life?
Mm.
Is it always making you feel like you have to be there in your business, that you always have to be in control? Or is there a point where you say, hey, I can do other things? Because why did you create a business? To just always be at your desk? No, you didn't go into business for yourself to always just be at your desk and always be working in your business.
No, and Hannah, you hit it on the head, because in our world, they usually have got the process thought out, but it's not documented. So they're pulling us in to automate it. Well, again, when you go to automate it, I need that detail. I need that roadmap. So it's like if I'm going from Atlanta to Denver, I can get in the car and drive and hope I can get there. And I'll probably get there, but it's probably not going to be the most efficient way. Where if I had Google Maps or a map that, I said, hey, and I want to go through St. Louis, it'll take me that effective way and tell me the right turns and give me guidance. That's kind of what you're doing for companies and helping them get there from point A to point B. And
Absolutely.
so it's just, and again, it sounds easy, but it's not. That's the challenging part. So if I'm a entrepreneurial owner,
Mhm.
what are some, one, they can hire someone like you or bring someone in, but that may not be the first place they start. Do you just kind of encourage them to start documenting some,
Mhm.
at least I'm gonna call it milestones? It may not be every step that happens along the way, but what are those key things that kind of trigger, or what are the handoffs? I would say, think of it
Mhm.
as a relay race. So there's 4 people running that race. Handing that baton off is actually the most important time that a relay race happens, because the other people know how to run. It's,
Mhm.
can you hand that baton off from person A to person B effectively? Because if you drop it, you're out of the race. So,
Yeah, I love
I mean,
that. I love that
that's
visual.
kind of the best. I've always tried to get people to understand, start there, because it's, if you write every single thing down, they're going to back off and not do anything. But it's like, at least tell me, when do I hand it off? Those are key things I think that are important for people to at least get started on.
Yeah, no, they're very important. But I also think that just getting everything out of your head and making it visible so that you can see it, and it doesn't have to be clean, it doesn't have to be polished, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be just what's happening right now today in my business.
Yep.
And if you just make it visible in a document, if you're old school pen and paper, or if you just open up a Google Doc or Word doc and you just start brainstorming or just brain dumping all of the things that you do every day. right? Because I think in that process of doing that, you can also start to find ways that you can streamline your business. Hey, I'm repeating this process over and over. Like, is this really effective? When you can see things, it makes it easier to get them organized and to have a more efficient way of doing something. So we think we know everything that's going on, but we can always improve it and make it better. And really just the key is just getting it visible, getting it out of your head. You can start with one service. You can start with one thing. It doesn't have to be everything, but just giving yourself a little bit of time to put that out and get it
And
out of your
this applies to people that are in business today, people that are thinking about selling. To me, this is really, it's really makes it valuable when you're going to go sell, that I can hand a playbook to the person that's looking at buying to say, hey, here's our processes. Here's things we've automated. Here are things that we chose not to automate, but here's our steps. It makes it more valuable when you go to sell that company than if you just say, I sell to people and here's the stuff I do, which is what a lot of people do. And then you wonder why you don't get the value out of the company that you thought you were going to get, because they have to come in and do all this work. If you do the work ahead of time, that's the value you're really selling to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're setting the standard for how you run your business. And so for them to understand if it's a valuable business that they want to own or buy from you, or franchise they want to buy from you, they need to see that you've had some sort of order or organization, or you had some sort of plan for outcomes in your business. So, I just don't see how anybody would even be interested in something if they just say, oh, that's a great concept or idea. But if I have to start everything from scratch and figure it out myself, at least you're giving them something to start with. You're giving them a foundation. They don't have to do anything you did.
You just hit on something. I mean, think about if you are going to franchise, a franchise is based, that's what a franchise is. They've written out the playbook of here are all the things that need to happen and how it needs to be run. You can tweak it and add your flavor, but if you'll follow their process, it's probably how they got successful, and they've just documented it really, really well on all their different steps. And so it's like taking that same concept and applying it to your business, even if you're not a franchise, because you could end up franchising your business. You may find out that, I mean, I've got a friend that his wife works at this donut shop up in Ohio, and they make the best donuts, but she's got one shop. And I'm like, you got to look at opening other shops. I don't want to open other shops. Well, have you ever thought about franchising and having your name? If you have it documented, they're going to do it exactly the way you say it, and you're going to make money without you even work it. It's like, what a great way to expand your business and make even more money if you've got a really good service or product that you sell.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm working with a client right now who isn't fighting me at all, but she's very sure about the fact that she doesn't really want to grow to the point where she has employees, right? And I can identify with that because I never wanted to have an agency, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe a little bit help here and there with specific things, like social media or things like that, we could outsource. But for the most part, I wanted to create a business that I can do that gives me, the work model is not keeping me strapped to my desk all the time, right? So, we were talking about this. We're going through process mapping and the client journey mapping, and I'm constantly asking, well, who's going to be the owner of this task? Who's going to do this? And a lot of it is her, right? But then some things she's saying, well, I could see a future admin doing this down the road. Okay, that's great. But, there was a lot of conversation about how there isn't going to be the growth of employees. And we brought up the fact that, oh, do you ever want to sell this business one day? Do you ever want to sell this your franchise that you've built here? The answer was yes. And I said, well, everything we're doing here is going to play a huge role in that. Yep. So just to end that, what we were talking about, that is a real life example of somebody, utilizing that path for process mapping rather than wanting to build a team or grow that way.
And again, the team may not be employees. I mean, like mine, I don't have employees, but I've got several 1099s that work with us, that they still need to know the process and how we work and, how we interact with our customers, as tickets come in through the website, how we respond. So that had to be documented because some of them are in the US, some are in Poland. And so I wanted to make sure that their conversations were going to reflect how we actually work. And culturally, we didn't have two different things conflicting. And so again, that has to be documented, and especially if they're 1099s. They may not be with you for long periods of time. You may be flipping and going to other people. So you've got to be able to ebb and flow and make sure, and you don't want to sit and have to spend 5 days training someone where you could actually give them some videos and documents and let them kind of follow through and then touch base with them. That's how you get more productive.
It's so true because yes, it works okay to maybe not have these processes in place when you are running your business and doing things your own way. But when you start to realize, okay, I do need to delegate, I do need to enable support in my business, and then you have these consultations with maybe somebody that's an executive assistant or a VA, because a lot of people start off that way, right? A virtual assistant. So I have been on so many calls, I can't even count, okay, how many times I have sat on the other side of a Zoom with a business owner who thought they needed my services. And I had to ask tons of questions in order to extract what they needed me to do, in order to create a scope of work for them, to create a proposal, to tell them how much this is going to cost them every month and a retainer, okay, to procure my services. So many business owners don't even know what to tell a 1099 or somebody they want to outsource to help them, what they even need to do. And that wastes time, that wastes training, that wastes energy, that wastes money.
Yeah.
Because of the turnover, because now you brought somebody on your team, they're not doing as well as you expected. Well, you're the reason why they're not doing what is expected, because they didn't know what to do right. Maybe they're not even the best fit for you, but if they don't know what you need from them, they're just going to show up and try.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that as we go into this summer, I'm going to hire a summer intern just to work with me on doing some stuff. Because there's one thing that Hannah does that is really, really cool. After she meets with some people throughout the week, she does a profile and highlights that person, and this kind of captures some key information. Well, I'm going to train my summer intern to help me do that because this person's a really good writer, and so I'm going to capture the notes, but hand it up. So again, I've got to document that process to say, okay, here's the things I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to hand that baton off to him so he can do these things and get it ready to come back out there and do it on a weekly basis. Because I found that while Hannah trained me to do it, I'm not good at it. It gets pushed off because I don't like to write, but I can sit there and note all the things I want to do and let someone bring it to life. And so those are things. And again, I encourage you, if you haven't ever met Hannah, definitely reach out to her because I'm sure she'll do one of the follow-ups with you sometime. It's really neat how she does the profile. It's a really neat feature.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Man, can I ask a question real quick here? Can you talk about, as we're talking about process and systems, and I really was looking through some information here. Can you talk about scope creep and how do most businesses accidentally create that in their business?
Well, I just did a webinar about this, actually. I co-hosted a webinar with a man who is a CRM expert, strategist. His name is Aman Thakral.
Mhm.
And, we had such a great time talking about this because it is a problem. Now, he does CRM implementation. He also does some automation like you all. And I, of course, am the process person. So we fit so well in that conversation to tell everybody, hey, this is what needs to happen first so you don't have the scope creep. Because if you don't really understand the process, again, I mentioned to you scope of work, right? Everybody who's a 1099 VA, if you're doing the job properly, the way you should be doing it so that your life doesn't get difficult, okay, you should have a scope of work agreed upon with you and that business owner. To prevent the little things that come up that you are not charging for, that makes you do more as the 1099 for the business owner that you did not realize when you first made this contract with them that they were going to ask you to do. And that is because the business owner is not clear about the processes or what they need you for or what they're hiring you for. They think they have an idea, right? So, and you thought as the 1099 that you had a great idea because you created the scope of work, but now you're being asked to do other things. So it's a really delicate balance between that person who's outsourced and the business owner and how you handle that. I mean, obviously we don't need to go into that, but again, just to answer your question, scope creep can be really prevented by just understanding what you need from someone, what you're going to delegate from them, and what's right for that person, who's the best fit for that.
Because if you have that document and you understand the scope, if things do start creeping, you can say, "Hey, we're going to put that in the parking lot," and you note it, and then you can do an add-on or whatever. But there's so many that don't understand what the scope is, and you're right, it starts here and it just starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger on them.
Well, yeah, I've dealt with it in the years that I was doing VA, EA work. Absolutely. I mean, and it's something that we're used to doing as employees in roles, because I have a nonprofit background, and the scope of work, an outline scope of work, is non-existent at a nonprofit. Okay. Everyone wears the hat
Yeah.
that you are given in that moment that you're needed to wear that hat. So it becomes exhausting, long hours. We know nonprofit,
And your hat has many different sides to it, so you can turn
many
it.
different sides. Right. But when you're a business owner, that can be completely controlled and prevented, because you create the business model that you want. And, especially, it's a two-way street. The VA is also a solopreneur. Okay. They're also a business owner. So you've got two business owners coming together to discuss and decide whether or not they're a good fit for each other. So the business owner isn't just interviewing the VA. The VA is interviewing the business owner as well, to make sure that this is the right type of person I'm aligned with. I want to help support their business, but I also want to do the work that they're asking me to do. And I need to understand it completely before I sign on. So, yeah.
So one thing I did want to touch on, and I think it's really important in the world of entrepreneurship, Dennis and I know this very well, it's dominated by males, right? Clearly, when people think about entrepreneurs, positive or negative, it's, a lot of times think about these hard charging, and it's guys. But there is I have met some of the most amazing women who have started their own businesses. Some of them just like blow me away. But I also recognize that, it's kind of more of a rare thing. And, can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe even some of the unique pressures that women might have as entrepreneurs, and what they face, when it comes to like mental load, as an example, how does that all come into play? This is something of a topic that I think needs more exploration.
It does. I think that a huge driving force for women becoming entrepreneurs, first of all, is that work-life balance. There are so many women who are mothers, they're raising a family, and just becoming a business owner can help, give you the time that you need to be at home with your family, and, not having the pressure of having to submit to an employer. So I think a lot of women go into business that way. And that's a real big driving force. Now, for me, for example, I don't have children. And so I am part of that minority of women that are just independent, doing things on my own. And so for me, the driving force to not be working in a work environment was that actually, like, not having the employer control my time as well. I wanted to be in control of how I structured my time and how I also earned money. And it can be intimidating for women, because we all know women are not the ones that technically ask for a raise or a promotion. We don't speak up. We're okay to just do what we're supposed to be doing, even though we're very frustrated inside with the job. So a lot of times we don't want to do that or submit to that. So I think that that's another driving force for women to want to get out of that environment and really take control, because women are badass. Like, we can do a lot of stuff, but like you said, it can be a lonely place in the business world. So because there's more men, I'm not sure as entrepreneurs and business owners, I'm not sure because I don't know that, perspective, if it does tend to be a lonely space for men who are business. Speak to constantly, it is very lonely, because we're all trying to build this business on our own. We don't have community. We don't know who to reach out to for help. And we do find comfort in talking with other women, because, we understand all of those challenges, and we understand what it's like doing the dual tasks of raising a family and responsibilities and trying to run the business.
Yeah, and I think that applies basically across to everybody, because it's one where, that's where Benny and I started this back during COVID, and it was loneliness. We were just talking to each other, and it's like, hey, let's start recording this thing, and then and Hannah and I are in a networking group. I do it more for the community. I get some leads and things, but it's just the fact that I get to meet other people once a month and talk to people and just interact, because it can just be you and customers all the time. And every once in a while, it's nice to have other business people and that kind of thing, where you can just kind of talk about things that are going on. And so, and a lot of it comes back to process, though, because usually you're talking about a problem that if you'd had it documented or laid out, the process would have worked so much easier. But a lot of times you can find people in those groups to help you figure out how to do it more effectively. So this podcast is kind of a more topics than just one today. So this is a really cool one.
I love it.
Yeah, this could go on for a long time.
So Hannah, in terms of if you're talking to the audience, can you give us an example of maybe how you were able to create, a process for, it's something real life that you've implemented. Leave that, maybe give some ideas for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. The reason that I do this in my business is because I'm so passionate about it, because it has come out of reality for me. Any work environment that I have ever been in, I have stepped into a role where there was something missing. There was nothing documented. Now, I'm talking old school, like an actual procedural manual, like a physical one, where now you don't have to have something sitting on the shelf collecting dust. It can be all digital, right? It can be in a project management tool and all that. But I'll take it back a couple of years ago when I was working at a nonprofit. And I was promoted to a director of education community engagement position. It was daunting because I came into an office where there were people who had been working together for years. They were all older than me, and I didn't really know how to find my place there. So when I started learning about all of the responsibilities that I had to do, which were community events that were very important to the children in about 14 counties of that area of Tennessee. And, I had no idea how anything was done. First of all, I didn't really grow up around this nonprofit, and it was all brand new to me. So I actually had to have the manager come in and walk me through all of these community events because there were no vendors listed. I didn't know who the partners were, the community partners. I didn't know who to even begin to reach out to get started with these events. Now, to me, that's awful when you bring somebody into a position, especially a leadership role in an organization, and they really have nothing to go by, to like no foundation, nothing written that they can go by to say, hey, I can follow this and now I can turn it into my own thing. I had nothing to follow. So this is not the first time that I've had to create something out of nothing. And when I left that job, and it was because of funding, and I didn't want to leave it because it was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. But when I had to leave it, I left a manual. I left a procedural manual with everything laid out, how I conducted every one of those events, all the vendors, all the partners, all the point of contacts, everybody that person needed to be able to do that effectively. It's just a start. It was something that I handed over to them. So that is all about making these processes and these systems visible, documenting them in a calm, sustainable way so that whoever is around you on your team or whoever comes in after you can take over. It may not be you. They're not going to be you, but they're going to actually have something there that can set them up for success. Because without it.
And this applies, I'm going to use my HOA so Easter was just recently. And so every year we do an Easter egg hunt. Well, every year there's 4 or 5 moms that put it on. Nobody has it documented. And so every year it's like a brand new event. And it's like finally 4 or 5 years ago, it's like, write this thing down so where do you get all this stuff? What's the dates this have to be done by? Who has to do this? And then it's like, okay, the next new moms coming in to run the Easter egg hunt don't have to sit there and recreate it. They can add on to it.
That's right.
But they don't have to sit there and figure out, okay, I got to go buy all this stuff here and there. And you can create a budget and you can manage things much more effectively. You can apply this to not only business, but just your personal life.
Everything. This makes life so much easier when you have some sort of process set in place for something. And again, it does not have to be polished. It does not have to be perfect. It just needs to be what is in that moment for that task to get accomplished.
We're going to have you back, Hannah, because I think that there's a lot of other things that we want to cover. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart for sure. And I know there are going to be some people out there who maybe need to talk to you and offline and maybe have a specific question. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. So if they just search for Hannah Rawiszer, they can find me. I'm a client journey strategist. And also Rawiszer, Rawiszer, and Hannah with 2 H's, H at the end. And then they can go to my website. It's www.helpinghannah.com. And there you can learn all about my signature service, my client journey accelerator. And you can also get on my email education course. It's free. And it is a lessons. It's a course that can walk you through just going ahead and starting some frameworks in your business to get this going, get this rolling. I'm always available to be reached out to as well.
Thank you so much, Hannah. This was really got me thinking, got my wheels turning here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah. Hannah,
Appreciate
thanks
the
a lot.
conversation. Thank you.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.